So today's episode, to anyone tuning in, is crypto conspiracy episode. And we're getting on this because last week, Jay was talking about Chinese balloons. And,
Is
and
that why we're talking about this?
yes,
Yeah, Jay, we're finally gonna let you run free and tell us all what you know that we don't know, yet that you also can't prove. So it's time.
and
Let's
we've
go.
got Victor here
Let's
because,
go.
and we got Victor here. For those who don't know, Victor is involved in a lot, and we have a lot of respect for what he's doing with Afro, Latino, Caribbean art through the Artist Collective. But that's like just the tip of the iceberg. And partly why I'm loving Victor's here is I don't even know he was bringing this to the table, but they have real time now the first live AI psychic. And so that's coming. We won't get into that in depth, but I think this is included in the conspiracy. Like, is this possible? And they've got quantum explanation. So we'll talk about that maybe a little later in the show or maybe in another show. But I want to make sure that we're hitting on all cylinders. So before we dive into this, I want to hear a round robin from just a headline from the panel here. If you have a crypto conspiracy, and I want to put it in queue for today's show. So like, if you have one ready to go, I want to hear it. So real quick, Jared, do you have any?
No, I don't really have any. I mean, the whole thing just seems like a conspiracy. So I'll pass the mic. I mean, no, like seriously, like okay, I don't really have any that I like am wholeheartedly subscribed to as like maybe in other things in life.
Sure.
But the fact that you have this entity that is bigger than JP Morgan Chase, is bigger than most of the brands you use every single day, and no one knows who created it, like that feels conspiratorial. So, that's and that thing's Bitcoin, right? So
Oh,
that to
just the
me,
size of Bitcoin itself.
I'm just all I've been doing is describing Bitcoin to you. So like I just think when any of us try to explain, like last night, I was at the supermarket and there was a guy in front of me and he was trying to pay for his food. And he had some oh yeah, so it's not really the size of Bitcoin itself. It's just kind of like Bitcoin, right? But he
Okay.
was trying to pay for his food and this kid at this grocery store, and if he's watching this, he's gonna think this is hilarious. He's like 21, 22, and every time he sees me, all he does is ask me about crypto. I like
Okay.
walk in the grocery store, I was like, hey, chain link, should I get it? Chain link. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. He always asks me about Cardano. I'm like, talk to my boy Grant. And the guy, there was this gentleman who overheard us and he was having trouble paying, ironically, with his credit card. The
Okay.
irony gets deeper. And he looks at me, he's like, well, since I have time, because like my stuff isn't working. What's up, Brian? Yeah, exactly. My fellow tinfoil hat wearing degens. Hey, Brian, good to see you. He asked me, he said, what is cryptocurrency? And I was like, oh, crap, what
What?
is cryptocurrency? And then so I started with Bitcoin. I said, well, Bitcoin was formed in 2009, probably as a response to the fact that we have too much centralization in banks and like we have too few people running the world and et cetera, et cetera. And he was like, okay, who created Bitcoin? And then it was right at that point where
Oh,
I knew I was over. It was over.
it
I
was
didn't
over.
have the elevator pitch was gone. Right.
Yeah.
So definitely need to approach how I do that. But anyways, I just think in general, the space seems like fairy dust to people when you try to explain it to them for the first time, because half of the market cap, and maybe not, it's like 41% right now, is taken up by this thing and no one knows who created it. So
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
pass the mic. Jay, I'll pass the mic to you. Go ahead. I've never seen you look so happy. This
that's
is
well, I'll follow up what you just said with another conspiracy theory. Who created Bitcoin? The same people who created the Federal Reserve.
Okay. And so this ties
Who
in.
created the
This,
Federal
he
Reserve?
just dropped the mic. Jay didn't even say anything.
Who created who runs the Federal Reserve? Who knows?
well, we do know the Rothschilds. Hello. So I said that out loud, the Rothschilds. So dear
You
God,
did. This is the place to say it.
this is where I'm gonna get assassinated on
You
camera.
have another 55 minutes, and Victor hasn't even chimed in. He's
I
just
know.
giggling, waiting.
No,
I-
because it's good. It's really, really good because he is according of my conspiracy theory about. So they printing, they buy at the beginning like everybody, it was a Nintendo coin, bro.
Yeah.
Your family was laughing at you, like everybody was laughing at me. Now the same they did. But this is where if they create it, they're not gonna create it. That's where I'm like, with what Jay said, like, but because if they created at that point for that, they will have the control since the beginning. I think,
Yeah.
let's say the mysterious guy created, they thought like all our families that we was clowns, that it was a joke. When they realized, oh shit, this is for real,
Yeah.
now they cannot enter right away because the price is going to skyrocket. So
Yeah.
they have to play the game, print money,
Yeah.
buy a little bit, pay the news. China banning Bitcoin. Everybody's scared selling Bitcoin, and then they keep buying more. They can buy more. It has to be a way. If they want to have full control, they need to have a lot of Bitcoin, bro.
So I agree with Victor that this is a possibility. Okay. And so mine that I'm bringing to the table today, a conspiracy that I think has a lot of merit. Now, I don't ascribe to any single conspiracy. I don't operate in conspiracies, but they are fun to connect the dots. So I think what Jay is saying and what Victor is saying, I agree with. But let me add some detail to this, at least the way my logic falls, and you guys can critique this.
Look at
And,
Jay
and,
and Victor. It's like they know something we don't, and I love it. We're gonna do.
and like
You know what?
FYI, Tristan's like, nice knowing you, bro. And then Tristan, before we came on camera, Victor brought this exact thing up about how CBDCs, and it's not exactly, I don't actually think this is conspiratorial as much as something that we actually truly need to watch out for. That when CBDCs come online, they can simply take out any tax, and Victor called out specifically the carbon tax. You might pay for a steak in Florida and it's $15, and suddenly you have $1.50 added to it or $2, and you're looking, and this is your meat tax, this is your carbon tax, and they can do that anywhere, which is that is a use case that is possible. But here, let me tie some things together. I said the Rothschilds, and Jay said the central banking, the Federal Reserve. Well, we know that. Let's just title it CE, the controlling elite. CE, the controlling elite. So there is a group, and it's always been there, and I don't think that's a conspiracy. There's always mega elite people who are no longer playing a money game; they're playing a power game. And of course, they've had these chess moves. They set things up and see if it's going to work. The Federal Reserve is one of those things, and that's not conspiracy. Go read the Creature from Jekyll Island is the book about that, and it's the biographical story of where the Federal Reserve came from. Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a great book. And I only know that because I love money and I study money, right? Well, if you think about this, when we went into Iraq in 2001, there was
I'm
a
listening now.
What he means is the first 8 minutes and 17 seconds he wasn't listening. That was his AI clone that was just smiling.
So the dots that have connected in, and to those watching, and specifically to the Rothschilds, I don't believe this, but I heard a friend say
Are you scared
we-
of the Rothschilds?
no, this is not conspiratorial advice, NCA. When we went into Iraq, we went into for the claim of weapons of mass destruction, and we know that there is no weapons of mass destruction, but we do know that there was trillions of dollars that was cash dollars that disappeared into the Middle East. And they
A
said
lot
that
of
this was
Rolex, a lot of Rolex.
lot of Rolex, but they're like, well, this went to paying people off and all this to get this going, but I don't necessarily buy all of that. And then there was all the Kuwaiti gold and the Saudi gold that also disappeared. Some people believe that this was us but pre-digital currencies. This was the US government and specifically the CIA shifting currency out of our books, off of our books into shadow bookkeeping.
Believe it.
Then Satoshi Nakamoto, the name comes from Japanese kanji. The Japanese kanji language, the characters literally mean, Satoshi means wisdom or knowledge. All knowledge, all wisdom. Nakamoto means the center of, also used for the base of operations of. And if you translate it, it's the base of operations of all knowledge. The CIA, the central intelligence of all
CIA.
things.
Okay.
And so some people think that Satoshi Nakamoto did set it up. And these billions, Jarrett, that you're talking about was largely funded by this black book amount of money that got ultimately minted. It went into shadow books and then funded this entire original operation. And to Victor's point, they just let it run because it wasn't even all the money that disappeared, but it was a large chunk of it that got it founded. And they just let it run to see, okay, it might be a clown show, but if it takes off, and the question is why? The CIA or the CE, the controlling elite, they want to give people a sense of freedom so that they can sit back and observe everything. So if you can give them a digital currency where they think is purely anonymous, but you have the backdoor key where you can see all transactions, and through social engineering, and because you invented it, you can crawl all transactions. So now anyone who thinks they're hiring prostitutes on the web or doing nefarious deeds on the web, they can now just simply observe and cherry pick the worst of the worst.
No, bro, they just gonna use Monero. What's going on with you, bro?
Oh, what's going? But yeah, or Zcash. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yes, bro.
But because the reason is that, but they claim that Monero is also part of that conspiracy because nearly all blockchains have derivative source code from some of the OG. Now, the claim is that Ethereum was built from the ground up, but
Mhm.
we know that Ethereum's quite centralized, relatively speaking. So if you
Yeah.
can let the people think that they're running amok with Monero and Zcash and all of these things, and they think that they're completely free, the more free you think the thing is, the more liberally you use it, the more likely in this conspiracy, they actually observe it all. But I kind of like this conspiracy for this reason, because it also follows with what I think is really going on with conspiracies. I don't think conspiracies are to put us in FEMA camps or to put us in jail or to catch us. I think it's to have a full transparency so that you can actually catch the worst of the worst.
So let me ask you something. If by generations since we start exchange, we was exchanging cow for shell. Then we moved to gold, silver. Then from the beginning of minting currency, then they mix it with copper, bro. So
Yeah.
that's the beauty of this system. So do you think the Federal Reserve will go Bitcoin where they cannot mint no more? They need currency where they can have unlimited supply. It can be traceable. It can
Yeah.
be traceable, but it's going to be unlimited supply. That way they keep doing the same scam where you deposit $10, they loan $1,000. If you don't run that way with the unlimited supply, you cannot keep the same system. And
Oh, yeah. I don't think they're going to go to Bitcoin. In fact, it's just like political parties. If you can get people to fight over petty things and create division, then you can actually control that narrative. And so I don't think Bitcoin will ever be adopted by the Federal Reserve. And I think they'll throw mud at each other forever. Dun, 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 because everyone's going to move into their camp. But so long as you are winning from both, I think that's always the play.
and don't forget about BRICS. BRICS have more gold. They have been stacking gold for more than 10 years. So how
Oh, the
many
BRICS
Bitcoin?
nations.
Yeah, how many
Oh,
Bitcoin they might be stacking and they don't talk about it. So I don't know, Jay. You gotta take over that.
Well, let me give you another way of looking at it. So if you think about it from an economic standpoint, I mean, going back to the whole like 2001 example, what if the U.S. government decided that, you know, or rather, what if the CIA thinks of itself not as a U.S. organization, but as a global organization?
I think they
Of-
do. Yes.
Yeah, and trying very much to affect a global economy, and recognizing that one of the ways that you do that is by controlling the currency, putting as
Mhm.
much currency into the economy as possible, and then still being able to have control over that. The way that you do that is by printing more dollars, right? And so
Yeah.
in 2001, they printed $1 trillion and took it into the Middle East. And that helped them by then being able to have control over these people's wealth. So
Hmm.
now your wealth is based in US dollars. And as a result, I control your wealth because I control the US dollar. I can sanction the US dollar anywhere on the world. And if you show up with US dollars, no one will take your transactions or will seize your yachts and will take your land and so forth. And then you see,
Remember Gaddafi. It's clear.
yes, exactly. All what's happening right now with every Russian oligarch.
Hmm.
And then you see them very much like you're saying, Grant, trying to do something that's very similar with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I think, and we talked about this a little bit last time, the one thing that they did that was excellent, that sort of threw us all off of trail, is that initially there were only 21 million Bitcoin. And so
Yeah.
you're thinking that, oh, this isn't an unlimited supply because it's only 21 million of them. And initially you're like, maybe it gets up to $1. And so it's only $21 million. And then, oh man, it got to $100. And then we figure out like, oh, you know what? There are these things called Satoshis, and there's like 2.1 quadrillion of them. And now, the it's gone from 21 million, which seemed like something that makes sense, and we can all sort of deal with that. No, it's this basically like not infinite, but almost unlimited supply of cash that is pumped into the economy. And like Victor was saying, when people start using and owning this piece of currency, they now have complete control over their wealth. And because Bitcoin has no geographic boundaries, you now can spread your tentacles into places where the US dollar could never get to.
Sure. That is a possible conspiracy. That's too funny. So let me ask this one to the Bitcoin Maxi. We talked briefly about last week. Um, I think we dove into this a little bit, but I have a pointed question to you, Jared, about this. Apparently, Russia is doing a state-sponsored Bitcoin mining operation that's supposed to go live in May. Is that correct?
That's what I've heard. Yep.
And is it your impression, and this is like bordering, and this is the thing about conspiracies, they border like real possibilities, Do you feel that the US government will try to use this to devalue or debank Bitcoin because they can't control? Let's get rid of the CIA theory for a second. Let's just say Bitcoin is what it is for a second. Do you think that this move in Russia is going to be used against it? Like all of this discussion about us aligning with Zelensky and the Ukraine is really just them building up to go, oh, this is Russia's currency and devalue Bitcoin? Do you think America's doing that?
So this is a super great question, Grant. And before I dive into this, I want to say that for me, conspiracies are normally things that are about past events that seem clear, but
Okay,
we muddy the waters, right? Like
you're
we
right.
didn't land on the moon. JFK was shot with some magic bullet.
That's a good
So
call.
when we're talking about the future, it's more just like the telenovela crypto news cycle, which is just every 5 seconds we should freak out and sell and buy at the same time. So what you're asking is about something into the future. And I think CBDCs also get into the future. But before I go there, I want to say the conversation around Bitcoin being potentially created by the United States as a way to control the future of economic value around the world is a very fascinating one because I'd never really considered it. And what you're talking about, Grant, when you're like, yeah, okay, there was trillions of dollars of gold, Kuwaiti gold, bullion, whatever, like, Bitcoin was started in 2009. By
Yeah.
2013, its market cap was only or crypto's total market cap was only $1 billion. So you're saying they've been slowly trickling in this money also throughout wallets that have been spread out, that no one wallet would be like $10 billion buy because that would be something someone would see on chain and then say,
Yeah.
this is where it gets kind of interesting, and I think a lot of conspiracies fall apart because for a lot of conspiracy theories to happen, you need more than 4 or 5, probably like 500 people to all keep their mouths shut. And in the world we live in, that does not happen. Everyone talks, everyone has a diary, everyone tweets, everyone texts, someone WhatsApps. So I think some of these things fall once you start to ask the larger questions. But it is a very interesting thing because Victor, I agree with you, and I will get to the Russia question, but I agree with you that, if the US is like, okay, we've gone from, like you said, trading cows and chickens and beads and the Maori stones or whatever. Um, and now we're gone through gold and silver, and okay, we can mine that. And also, this is something else. I guess actually I'll table this gold discussion and Bitcoin, and let's come back to it later. And now, okay, the US government's like, well, eventually, because everyone's on the internet, we're going to have a digital currency. They see Bitcoin come along or they just create it. And then they decide that they want to basically be one of the biggest shareholders of it. So that way they can continue to control people. And then, as Jay says, they can control people in CIA, KGB cohort. Exactly. They can control people in nations where they currently can't be, or where they can't operate. That makes
Yeah.
like really good sense, especially because I'm now back in Massachusetts, but I was recently in Colombia, and like the US government is not welcome in Venezuela. But you know what is welcome in Venezuela is Bitcoin. And you know what's in Venezuela? The biggest oil reserves in all the Americas. So you can
Mm,
start to see how this like strategically makes sense. The one thing I will say, Victor, is I've always considered that because the US is, post Bretton Woods, post World War II, the global reserve currency, it's super, super powerful. But the only thing that's more powerful than that is something with a finite amount that if they were to get a lot at the beginning, they would control. Like if the US had a million Bitcoin, for example, they would control everything forever because no other nation's going to ever be able to get. I mean, 21 million would be about 4 point something percent. No other nation's going to ever be able to get that close if we all go
I'm gonna
towards Bitcoin.
take you to the past, like you say, conspiracies, right? So let's
Sure.
say we are in the head of the IMF, I think the International Monetary System, and we are in the, let's say, in the 70s. Yo, guys, we can make this paper. We're gonna call checks, and we're gonna make more money. Then you got in the 90s, yo, we got this thing. People no need to use no more check, bro. The credit card. And we make more money. What do you think is their position right now?
yeah. Go ahead and
Well,
finish your thought though, Jared. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Victor, I like exactly where you're going. But the idea of having something that's finite, if you
Yeah.
get a lot of it at the beginning, which is what many people who are listening to this channel, which is what all of us are doing in many different ways, whether
Yeah.
it's an NFT collection, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's like Ethereum right now is deflationary. They're burning billions of dollars of it every like quarter. If you get a lot at the beginning, then you don't even need a lot once it blows up if the adoption were to happen as it is.
Yeah.
So I think I'm starting to see how you can make that argument and it becomes a little bit juicier, especially because of the CIA and the whole, you know, this is all knowledge and all that stuff. But I want to go to the Russia thing because I think it's a really fascinating one.
Yeah.
And when the Russians invaded Ukraine, because that is what happened, I know that Putin got up today and said that their hand was forced because the Ukrainians were so dangerous or whatever, or provoking them. That's like me throwing a rock at a tank and it feeling provoked. Um, so when that happened, I remember hearing some geopolitical analysts that were talking about how if Russia, because of its massive oil reserves, ever decides to create their own currency, and they didn't say Bitcoin or they didn't say anything, they just said a currency. Let's say, here you go. Here's my iPod, my AirPods. If all of a sudden Russia only accepted AirPod shells or whatever these chargers for oil, the price of these things would go through the freaking roof. So whatever Russia decides to say, hey, we're only going to accept this and basically say F you to the petrodollar or the US dollar, uh, it would shift things quite considerably because then what's going to happen? Germany, who has one of the biggest economies in Europe, is going to have to start buying because I think still 50% of the way that they heat and they stay warm and they cook is from Russian oil. So then Germany's going to be in a quagmire because they're part of the European Union and they're also part of NATO. So then what do? Because now they still need to go right next door, even though they don't want to buy from their neighbor, they're kind of forced to, right? If they want to get decent prices, and Europe has already been paying through the year forever for oil. So now they have to go get their AirPod, their AirPod chargers to buy oil. So you substitute AirPod chargers for Bitcoin, and it becomes really interesting. Because then, like you're saying, then what is the US to do? To ban Bitcoin? I've read something earlier today, and I think Grant, maybe you shared it in the chat that was like the US is may or may not be pulling away from like Bitcoin or something like that. But the reality of it is blockchain is going to underpin a lot of the ways that the world works. So whichever countries lean into it, I think are going to be better. Just like whatever countries leaned into the internet came out on top. If we, as the United States, and I'm using that liberally at Jay, I know that you're from the Caribbean and I live in Canada. Victor from Puerto Rico, live up in the Northeast. But in the Americas, we're beholden by the United States. If we step away from blockchain over fear or competition, it's going to be a bad thing long term. And those who basically can, like, if all of a sudden oil goes to Bitcoin and then the US doesn't have Bitcoin as a nation, or its citizens don't have Bitcoin, for an example, it won't play out well. I don't think the game theory is going to play out well because it's always going to come down to some binary decision, especially when it comes to currency and the history of currency. Um, Human
Mm.
civilization has always just gone towards the hardest currency. So, hardest
Mm.
being the thing that's most difficult to create. And right now, Bitcoin maxis, I guess I'll raise my hand. We would say that that is Bitcoin. So, I'll,
Interesting.
I'll pass the mic.
But do you think, I mean, it sounds like your hypothesis is, regardless of what America does, if Russia kicks off this state-sponsored mining, and if Russia says we're only accepting this, that will drive the price up. Doesn't matter what America does.
Doesn't matter what America does, that would drive up the global price instantaneously. And I think it would be a shot across the bow at Congress, at the Senate, at the entire US political structure that they need to wrap their heads around what's going on. Yeah, Roger Williams, welcome to my TEDx on how the US and Russia are
Welcome
going
to
to
my
be
TED Talk.
in a it's not even a cold war, it's a bit war for probably the future. Um, I'm kind of just like,
Has
this has
America
always
banned
been an
any other
issue.
currencies?
What's
Like, is it illegal as an American to hold any specific currencies?
No, I could show
Yeah.
you, I got pesos right here. But come
Well,
get
I
me,
mean,
CIA.
I
Come get
know.
me.
I mean, most
In
of the
crypto,
Americas,
yes.
it's
Crypto,
But
yes. In
yeah,
crypto, you cannot do transaction in different DeFi projects, and then you gotta use a VPN to be able to interact.
well,
Otherwise,
I know that. I guess I'm talking about currencies, and the only reason I'm pulling this up, like, can Americans hold rubles right now? Can Americans hold North Korean
yeah,
dollars
yeah.
right now?
I don't think you can. Can you? It seems like based on the sanctions, like you probably can't hold
That's what I'm
rubles.
getting at. Like,
Can't
there are
hold
U.S. sanctions.
like the Iranian dollar, whatever it is. You probably couldn't hold not like if you had some of that, and the FBI showed up at your door, you probably end up in Guantanamo. I imagine.
To
ooh,
that
of
effect, yeah, like what they
Oh,
call terrorist states. That's what I'm getting
Grant,
at.
Grant, yeah, you're asking about the outlawed nation, the pariah nations. Yeah,
Correct.
I think if the CIA knocked on my door and I had just like a suitcase full of rubles, I think that I would no longer be on Not Crypto Bros.
You would just be like a hooded character over here that
Yeah, I would have my voice all, and Victor would be my stand-in because we're probably
Yeah.
brothers anyways.
So okay, so that's my point. Like, if Russia takes on Bitcoin, and it's not impossible to imagine that if Russia does a state-sponsored mining operation that, like, El Salvador, they don't announce this is also a Russian currency. Like, they've got two currencies. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that the United States says, well, Americans are banned from holding Bitcoin and from doing that because this is now a Russian. Oh yeah, this is interesting. Tristan says it's against North Korean law to take their currency out of the borders. And I remember when I traveled with Semester at Sea at the time, Vietnam had a rule like this, and I collect currencies from every country I go to, and I had to sneak. I think at the time I felt like I had to sneak that currency out of the country, but I'm not entirely sure. But I hear what you're saying about this hard currency and this limited supply, but the US government is brazen, and I don't imagine Brian, of course, Brian is the professor. He says, "Here's the list of restricted currencies." So someone grab that from LinkedIn because I'm totally curious. Um, but I wouldn't to me, it would actually reduce the price of Bitcoin because as much as you're saying there might be a bump, hey, Russia adopted this. Sure, if Russia adopts it and there's no reaction, I think it will take off. But if the US comes in with any sort of sanctions at all,
So yeah, no. So I hear you, and I want to cut you off. I think Russia, the state sponsored, mining. That's just for the Russian government to be able to use to buy
Yeah.
and sell and to have power. It's not going to be like El Salvador where it's going to become a national currency where citizens can
Interesting.
hold it and buy and sell it without having tax implications, which is the
Okay.
situation in El Salvador. The Russians, that's a dictatorship, right? They don't want to give their citizens freedom. They don't want to give their citizens in a dictatorship. There's no such thing as private property. And that's what Bitcoin is really. It is something that I can hold in my head just with my seed phrase. So the Russians, Putin doesn't want his citizens to have it, but he wants his controlling elite and the military to basically have access to it if they ever decide to say, hey, you can buy oil in ruples or in dollars or whatever they're going to ask for, or you can get 5% off if you buy with Bitcoin.
Huh.
Because that's probably how they would probably do it. Even 1%, 2%, the incentive is crazy because of how much oil could cost for a nation. So I don't think it's something that they're ever gonna let their citizens have
Yeah.
just based on the fact that it is authoritarian over there at this point. Um,
So
And
sidebar on this.
USA,
Oh, go ahead, Victor. Go ahead,
the
Victor.
USA will come up, like you say, yes, we banning Bitcoin, blah, 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 because they want to buy more and the institutions to buy more. So they're going to push the narrative. The paper hands will sell and they come back. Hey, you can buy Bitcoin from us, and Bitcoin is going to be in 500, who knows, a
I,
million.
I wouldn't put it past them. Not at all. But can I throw in another conspiracy theory here?
Yes, let's go.
And I'll say this one is all
sprinkle it,
mine.
Jay. Sprinkle it on top.
Yeah.
This one is all mine. I haven't heard anyone else say so. That could just be completely off. On
Take
one.
this video, put it on the blockchain, put it on an inscription. This is just Jay Harris's
This is
thoughts.
Jay's
Everyone.
ordinal. Go ahead.
Jay's
So-
ordinal.
So my conspiracy theory is every time there's ever been a major decline in the price of Bitcoin has come at around the same time that there's been a major whistleblower against the US government. So in 2013, when we were at like $100 and we fell down to, I forget whatever it was, that was like the first like major crash. That was Edward Snowden.
Yeah, that was
I-
Snowden.
The other major one that comes to mind right away is 2019. That was President Trump and the Ukraine whistleblower.
Mhm.
The one that I haven't been able to fully figure out is 2017. There were lots of whistleblowers in 2017, but which one is exactly connected?
Is that where Julian Assange and WikiLeaks comes in?
Is
No,
that
you-
did that happen in 2017?
I feel like
Panama
that's
Papers.
earlier.
Was it the Panama
Panama.
Papers?
Oh, Panama. That's a good one.
Which,
Let's
but why,
let
okay, so
the
why do you think
Panama
that is, though?
Papers
Connect the
happen.
dots. Why do you think that is?
I feel like I forget which of you were saying this just now, but it's like, you know, it took like a really long time for people to sort of develop the interest in crypto and blockchain and Bitcoin. And the reason why it took a long time is because all along the CIA, the US government, whoever, the elite are slowly picking off the people that could possibly, overturn the entire thing. So a whistleblower comes up and says like, oh man, like we're doing terrible things in other countries and with finances and the economy and so forth. And then suddenly the price falls and everybody stops talking about Bitcoin. It drops below everyone's radar until everything gets back to a good place and then it comes back.
Tristan says, here it comes, calling the wedge, Jake.
I do
wait,
think
wait.
it's a wedge, but what
No,
no.
it's actually called the whistleblower wedge. And the next whistleblower flag, I'm sure Jay will have a technical analysis chart that, that you can see. This is Chelsea Handler, and this is Julia Assange, and this is the Panama Papers. I want to see it, Roger. So let's translate, Jay. Every time someone snitches Bitcoin drops.
Yeah.
And is that because the users of Bitcoin are like going underground?
I think it's the other. I think whoever is controlling the price of Bitcoin is dropping it so as to avoid showing up on anybody's radar. Like, oh, this might be connected in a type of deal.
Interesting. That is the first I have. That is officially the the first
So wait a second, Jay. You know what's going to happen, right? You need to come up with a whistleblower for it going from 69,000 down to
To,
25,000,
yeah.
or you're
I
going to
don't.
have to
What
fall on your
happened in
own sword.
We can
2021?
become the market makers.
Well, I think Jay's going to literally become he's going to become the new Snowden just to make this thing come true.
Yeah, for real. Oh, Panama Papers were in 2016. That's kind of close. It's
It's
the year
close
before.
because
That
I
works.
think it was late 2016 if I recall correctly, and they started going through and publishing the Panama Papers into early 2017 when they started realizing Prince Charles, all these people had their money in offshore accounts. Definitely.
I got a
Very
good one, Jay. Did you hear that in 2017 when Bitcoin crashed, it was when they opened the long and short position and all the entities shorted? Ah, you didn't do
Oh,
that one.
that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
Grant, Victor.
You know,
Say that again. Say that
Grant,
again.
let's go. Grant,
No, it's like I
let's
told
hang
you,
up. Let's
China
hang up
holds
and let him play.
the Ethereum. So in 2017, Bitcoin went to 17 Gs. All depend the exchange, 17, 18, up to 20, some more other ones. But in that moment before the crash, the exchange opened the short and long trade, the perpetual contracts trades.
yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah.
all the entities and the whales, they should start putting their position and selling their Bitcoin, because at that moment, if we all four was holding a good chunk, you can put, we can coordinate. Let's put a 100% leverage to sell, and J sell in the exchange. And when they start to sell the massive Bitcoin, everybody freak out, everybody sell, bro. They make a stupid money, bro. But yeah, I think they opened the leverage trading 2017 and they crashed it.
So someone needs to also look up when the Jeffrey Epstein suicide happened and if there was a Bitcoin dip. I want to see. Jay's like, I'm pulling it. Jay's I'm pulling it.
Jay's gonna pull out his actual physical calendar and go back through and look.
Yeah.
August
'Cause he's like,
2019.
No,
August
I like.
2019,
So
boys.
Jay, do you think he don't just pay off Twitter with his Flocky tweet?
Say that again. He what?
Do you
What?
think Elon pay off Twitter with his Flocky tweet? Come on, guys.
No.
That's why you gotta
What?
learn long position, bro. You put a long position, you wait,
Yeah.
you make a tweet, sell, boom.
So you think Elon was the Floki whale?
No, okay. He make a tweet about Flocky, and Flocky
Yeah.
went 300%. So if you got a position with 50x multiplied for 300,
And you
make
think
it
his position was big enough for his purchase of Twitter?
between Doji and Flocky, bro. Come on, man.
Oh my god. The best part is we can go look this up. You know, we live in the world of the chain. We can go on chain and look, and then you can follow the addresses and do some analysis.
But
That
you don't
is
follow
hilarious.
the addresses
the real-
that are doing leverage trading. You can't follow the address because leverage trading in exchange can be
Yeah,
centralized or decentralized.
decentralized. Yeah.
That's
And
true.
then
That's true.
the transfer is little by little.
You know,
Tristan. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Jay.
the conspiracy around the
Hold
the
on,
Twitter
Jay. You got to
person.
read that. Jay, you got to read that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, in 2019, 100%. Grant, I don't know how you call that, but you're in the conspiracy universe now, buddy. This is it. But look,
I don't know why that's so funny to me.
This is ridiculous. People die every day, and Bitcoin goes up 10 to 15% every day and down 20% every day. So every day, Jay feels like he's like, yeah, vindicated. I knew it. I knew it.
one
Tristan,
of
nice
those
knowing
has
you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the real conspiracy behind Twitter is
Okay.
and this is one that I heard. So, and I'm struggling to remember the name of the guy. I'm like hopefully no one gets offended, but the Middle Eastern guy who was, I think, chairman of the board at Twitter, or he had like a really high position. And
Okay.
it was like one of the princes from the UAE or something like that. The whole thing, what people are saying is that Elon bought Twitter with the intention of taking it private and then basically selling it off to the UAE or the Saudis or whoever, and that's really the reason
I would
behind it.
believe that one. I would believe that one.
He can
Well,
hook up all the wires with Neuralink, and he gonna get the money right away, bro.
so,
The
but
full
why is
package.
that a conspiracy? Like, because to me, that's like, forget that it's the UAE for a second. Elon basically took his stake, a ton of Twitter share or Tesla shares, and basically staked them, got financing from royalty out of, I think it was the UAE or the Middle East, but we could say anywhere. Just got financing, and with the plan. And how do you sell financing to the tune of billions? You offer to take it private, and you
Mhm.
offer to let them take a controlling share of it being private. Is that a conspiracy, or is that like good business sense?
Well, it would have never been able to happen if Twitter was still a public company. Like, even if it were legally possible, I don't think people would have allowed it to happen.
Just PR wise, people
Just
would have
PR wise,
trashed the idea.
Twitter being like what do we call it? The town square.
Yeah.
And you like
Yeah.
imagine if you sell your town square to a foreigner.
Yeah, the US would have never let basically our new newspaper, a quarter of it be sold to the Saudis. That's just not gonna work, right? You can't sell Prince Ben, that's just not gonna happen. So
Yeah.
Jay's right. The only way that works is you gotta get it private, and then it's a different
Okay.
game because then ownership can be less geopolitically tied because there's basically not fiduciary responsibility in stockholders and the whole board or whatever. But hey, I want to get us back on crypto because
Okay.
otherwise
Yes.
we're gonna go down other conspiracy rabbit
Yeah. Yeah.
holes.
Yeah.
So I feel like there was some other ones that we had talked about
You talked about the
before.
crypto queen.
The crypto queen.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm actually
Do you
already
wanna
working on the YouTube thumbnail before
Let
this,
me
so
have
she's
a
on there. So
little
we got to
bit,
talk
a
about her.
little bit, a little bit of that's what we was talking. So Russia and China in the past news article, they are joining. So imagine, I agree with Jay, what's gonna happen because China is the next Bitcoin maxi with mining. So yeah,
is China still mining Bitcoin? I thought that went to Russia.
I
So
think they're still mining.
They're still mining?
China banned
They banned mining.
miners. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they're not as like the state mining, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those
Yeah.
two countries, like Jared said, they can like, you want this, now you gotta move on Bitcoin and
You know
gold.
what's
I think
you know
they're
what's
gonna combine it with gold.
Hmm.
you're there, it's combined with what?
With gold. Because there's the reason why they stacking so much gold. They not stacking so much gold because it's beautiful, bro.
Well, I think gold. Wait, Victor, who do you mean? China
Both China, they
and
they
Russia.
was doing that,
Yeah.
but now
Yeah.
in the past month, United States is rushing to buy gold.
So here's an idea I had, and I'm going to make this into a more than blockchain episode. But the US is they're looking ahead, right? They're looking into the future, just like China, just like Russia. Any big nation that's looking for, as Grant said, they're not into the money game, they're into the power game, right? If you look ahead 50 years, we're probably, if you're wealthy enough, you're going to have your quinceanera, you're literally going to go around the moon and back, right? Like in like a rocket. It will be like 500,000 per person. And we may have it down to the way we have like Concorde flight now. Like, well, let's just
Sure.
live in that world. Okay. So now we're kind of interplanetary species and we're flying around. There's a lot of gold, probably not on Earth. So because gold is only so cherished because I think it only inflates like 2% every year as we basically mine more. There is obviously a finite amount, but we don't think of it that way because really that amount is only limited by our resources, right? If it costs $1 million to get an ounce, then we just have to see how much it's needed, right? So whereas Bitcoin, it could go, the price could go forever. So I was thinking the other day that like the nation that has as much, and this is such a Bitcoin maxi thing, but like the nation that has the most Bitcoin or the person or the individual or the company, like Michael Saylor, right, with MicroStrategy, he has so much Bitcoin
Yeah.
and he's leveraged fiat debt to basically stack Bitcoin. Now, this will either be looked back in 30 years as a genius move or it will be looked back as the dumbest move. And we're going to see what happens. But I was thinking the other day, once the human race is interplanetary and we're able to go and basically find gold and find all these other really what are now on Earth scarce resources. Our scarcity on Earth is only bound to the fact that we're stuck on this marble that's floating in a vacuum, right? But in all of the solar system, there's only 21 million Bitcoin, as far as we know now, right? Unless the CIA apparently decides to change that if we live in that world. But as we start to move out in 200 years when we're interplanetary, we may just have the miners, the gold miners of the future, may just go out on rigs and bring it back. At
Yeah.
which point, having gold no longer is that scarce, right? However, having Bitcoin could be phenomenally scarce. So, anyways, that was kind of like my own little thing, not even conspiracy, because just kind of an idea I wanted to throw out and see
That's
if
a
you
good
guys.
one, bro. But you make me
Yeah.
think that why the Anunnakis came here to dig for gold
I
and not
love it.
in other
Yeah, I
place.
love it. I love it. I love it. They came for water. They came for water, Victor. That's
For
Why
water.
the Anunnaki? Because the Anunnaki needed people, man. And Nibiru, for those who don't know this, Nibiru was the ninth planet at the time, right? And in its orbit is like on a, what is it, like a 50,000 year orbit around the sun. And on its orbit elliptical, when the Anunnaki were here, Nibiru was within distance of Earth. And this is why we haven't seen it. And there is a theory that Nibiru was destroyed in its last passing. This is why in a lot of the ancient Sumerian texts, there's actually spaceships and another planet called Nibiru. And the Anunnaki came from there and got stuck here. But I don't think they needed to be here. I think they actually got stuck here. If it's true, I don't think this. I haven't
You
spent any
sound
time.
pretty
It's too
informed,
late
Grant.
now. Way too late now.
Yeah, we're gonna take this audio clip. You're never getting a job again. Hey, I'm Grant Sparks. I want to be your coach. Aren't you that Anunnaki guy from the internet?
Did you see my not conspiracy advice?
Yeah, did you see Not Conspiracy Bros show? Oh, never mind.
Anyways, I think they came here just to make friends and got stuck here, really. It wasn't resources. Going back to your infinite metals thing.
Yeah, that's sorry, I was gonna make a bad joke, but it's like, yeah, that's what they said about Columbus. It was just here just to hang out and make friends.
We're here to be friends. I do think that we will do asteroid mining in our time. I don't think we will even need to send people. I think droids. I think droids and robotics are a very real possibility. If we look at the two rovers on Mars, the level of intelligence on those rovers, A, is old tech, B, is still supremely impressive. And I think that with AI guiding specific AI, not general AI, specific AI, being able to guide these so that they're not waiting for sometimes, minutes or hours for instructions from Earth. There's the one asteroid, I was trying to pull it up, that was solid. It's like solid titanium or something like this. And it itself is worth like, I think $1 quadrillion alone. And Jarrett, to your point, that particular precious metal, it might dip. It might. But when you think about the cost of getting the resource, right now, we lack the resource. And so it's expensive. So once we have to build an entire industry called droids and spaceships just to get there. By the time we get there and then extract it back, the cost of having gotten there is still so high that it doesn't depreciate the asset. In
Oh,
theory.
that's a good point.
I mean,
In
that's a
theory.
great point. That's behind Bitcoin. That's when people are like, oh, there's nothing backing it. I'm like, yeah, to get one Bitcoin, you need so much computing power. And to get that much computing power, there's a cost behind the energy. And that's really how you can figure out whether it's undervalued or overvalued, right?
Yeah.
And for a moment there, when it hit
Man.
15,000, each Bitcoin costs like 17 or 18,000 to mine. But you're totally
Yeah.
right. To create everything you're just saying, that could be a $3, $4, $5 trillion industry to go get 300 billion.
And we'll
So
do that
it's
on
like
debt. We'll do that on credit. And so when you look at that credit, you're like, dang, okay, they're speculating. And how long will it even take for it to start getting here? And then how long will it take to collect the quadrillion dollars? Now, there is other ways to do this that are much more efficient, like actually pulling the asteroid out of its orbit, slowing its velocity down, putting it in Earth's orbit, which competes with the moon. So gravity's off, but it is a lot closer. But when you talk about creditors, JP Morgan and Chase, all these bankers who are going to extend quadrillions worth of debt, like it kind of is evened off a little bit. And so you might have a depreciating asset. But this, I always come back to this about Bitcoin. I need to hear the demand case. I get the supply case. The supply is limited. I get that it's very hard to do. It will get increasingly hard. But the demand case, not to be critical of Bitcoin and Bitcoin maxis, I just am searching for where is the demand case. Jay, did you have a thought there?
Yeah. This was something that I was thinking of. And this is connected with the scenario that you place in terms of like going to an asteroid and mining it. So could the demand for Bitcoin in the future be based on the fact that one, we have access to these precious metals in the sky, but two, because of the way that we usually consume precious metals, in that we just store them on the ground somewhere in like a Fort Knox, those metals never need to come back to Earth. You just need to have some proof that they exist.
There's
And
a
There,
Warren
then,
Buffett quote on this.
that's
And the
good,
Warren,
but and I relate that with the diamond industry. The diamond
okay,
industry have the challenge when this guy came with the fake diamonds. It's real diamond, but it's in a factory done. So he increased the supply, but the diamond industry have, let's put in a beautiful word, a nice crowd that like gold, they it is what it is, and it is what it is. So that's it. It's a lot of influence who is in control and give access. Okay, I'm gonna let you try. I'm gonna let another example, simple. Before Corona, the vape was killing a lot of people, a lot of kids, vaping. So for
they,
me, that was a strategy because now they don't die for vaping. But when you came out, if you was the Newport owner, you feel it, bro. All the tobacco industry, they feel it. So they like
interesting.
"Brrr, red card. Hey, you gotta do something here. And then eh,
Yeah.
it's that other concept. That's why the diamond have value, bro. Because
Why
your
does it have
wood,
what?
the
magnet.
diamond. Why a diamond have value?
Sure.
Because it's a psychological manipulation they put long time ago. And if you don't give a diamond to your wife, bro, you're in trouble. So that's the real value of the diamond.
Yeah. If you don't spend a month's salary on the diamond,
Yeah.
so,
Now,
Because
to your
because
point,
you're showing to your partner how much you're willing to spend for her, you know?
yeah,
So that's the
that's marketing,
narrative.
though. I think a lot of these precious metals that we're talking about, they have a strong industrial demand. So Jarrett or Jay, they will need to bring some of these materials to Earth. We are over consuming. Like I think if you go look at the Earth's economic consumption, America alone consumes 4 Earths worth of its share of resources every year. Like we are over consuming. So we will need some of these resources. But I think Warren Buffett has a quote about gold. He said, we're the only species that takes something out of the ground, shines it a little, and puts it back in the ground in the form of safes. And so you're very right. But why do we do that? We do that for refinement. And I know that Peter Diamandis of the X Prize, he's big on sticking refineries in space. Now, refineries by proxy take oxygen and gravity. People don't realize this, but like most refineries we don't think about gravity, but it requires gravity and oxygen to get the heat going the way it is and get the pressure going so that dross rises to the top. Because even though the titanium is there and we could basically mathematically compute its value even without refinement. The process of refining gold or titanium or platinum is its own form of ensuring. It's almost like auditing the blockchain. It's ensuring that this is what we say it is. It's ensuring that it's that level of quality. So I think we'll still have to solve for precious metals, but you do raise a really valid point. So long as like whoever controls the gold controls, the game. Whoever controls this titanium controls the game. Whoever controls the largest chunk of Bitcoin controls the game. So they could control that from space. But at some point we will want to make use of it, like, because things only have value if they are exchanged eventually. But I thought you were going to make the case about Bitcoin from this regard. Since we have instant currency in the form of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, why couldn't we fractionalize something like the titanium asteroid immediately? And we already extended the credit, basically future value. Credit is future value. Why couldn't we circulate the wealth earned over the next 50 years of that asteroid now? And I'm sure that's an actuarial game, as to like whether or not that would work. But like you have an android that basically goes, I got a pound of this titanium. I'm flying it back to Earth. And it's like, see you in another 3 years. But immediately the value is then minted in the form of an NFT or something. And people can now acquire that. When it arrives, it's theirs, like Bitcoin. What's your thought, Jerry? You look like you're chomping at the bit on the thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's exactly how it happened. Humans love credit and they love debt, whether toxic or good debt. So the second we find a pie in the sky and the four of us put our money together, we put Bitcoin together and we can go buy it. We can start leveraging that to the hilt here on Earth to basically get stuff. Be like, yeah, no, we're good for it. Like, what's your collateral? Well, it used to be 600, rental apartments, but now it's 3 pounds of this new, space rock essentially. So I
Mm.
totally think that that's a reality that could happen.
We need a good
Um,
insurance, bro.
you need good insurance, and you were also going to need a really nice multi-sig wallet. And yeah, um, the thing about Bitcoin and the demand, I just think it's a long game, and I think it will take its time. But like currencies are dying every day, and if
Yeah.
you're just in the United States, you do not see this. But like Venezuela right now, one of my coworkers was just there, and he's like, I've never seen a case bigger in a country ready for Bitcoin and stable coins to come in and really help people out to help them kind of slow the volatility of their depreciating currency. So I do think if you're making the dollar or you're making the euro or you're making the yen or the ruble or like, maybe not the ruble, but some certain currencies, the British pound, you're probably going to be okay. But out of all of the nations that are like, under what's the word I'm looking for? Recognized by the United Nations, 94% of them, their currencies are going to go to zero in the next 30 or 40 years due to hyperinflation. And the fact that
Oh
they're
yeah.
pegged to the dollar, we're going to keep printing to the hilt every 4 or 5 years or political cycle. So
Oh yeah.
the demand is going to happen. I mean, if we sat here 4 years ago, you could say the same thing, but where's the demand going to come from? And if we sat here 8 years ago, you could say the same thing, but where's the demand going to come from?
Yeah.
Bitcoin has gone from, I was reading a thing today, it was once sold for 3 cents a Bitcoin. And now it's at 25,000 and people think it's dead. So I'll let somebody else do
What
that
is that?
math, but what's up?
What was that?
I'm saying Bitcoin was once exchanged for 3 cents a
Oh
Bitcoin,
yeah.
and now it's at 25,000. So when you think it's 25,000, but people think it's dead. People think Bitcoin has failed. It's
People
a
think
failed
it's
project,
dead.
and it was sold for 3 cents.
Yeah.
And I've one of the things that like the one video that's really gone viral more than blockchain was just about how point 0.1 Bitcoin is going to be a lot when you really look at it. I was just in Colombia, and the minimum wage there is about $250. $250, and those people are barely making it by. So for them to be able to afford right now a tenth of a Bitcoin would be $2,500 or 10 months of their work if they were doing nothing else but buying Bitcoin. Not renting, not eating, not transporting, not doing anything, not having fun, not buying a beer. So I guess my point is the demand for Bitcoin is going to come not from it's going to come from emerging markets. It's going to come from the
Yes.
developing world as their currencies die, and it's already starting to happen.
So now you're answering the question. These charts I've been throwing up, one was the Venezuelan bolivar, and
Yep.
this is the Colombian peso, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And this is a 2-year chart, and it's going to zero. The Venezuelan bolivar going to zero. And when I ask for, hey, what is the demand case? I think a Maxi's best answer is emerging markets, because these are these an emerging market with a currency doing this. If you say anything other than this is a failed state in its current state, it might change next quarter, something might shift next year, but in its current state, if we cannot provide the basic necessities, basic cost of living, or if our people are working hard, Colombians, Venezuelans, they work hard and they show up and this thing goes to zero, and because of how you're stewarding it, that's a failed state, and you're absolutely right. That is the best synthesized response I could ever hear from a Maxi is, let's just pull up the chart on a few of these currencies, and you tell me what emerging markets are gonna start asking for.
I
Like ya they say, Venezuela is a good example, having a big oil reserve, gold. You have a lot of resources, but here is where Jacob people come, the 3-letter people that if you not agree with them, down, bro. So
Yeah. 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 Go
Yeah,
ahead, Jay.
100%. And I'm putting up a video soon about Venezuela and Argentina and just talking super simply about fiat being trash. Brian said one thing: we're denominating everything in dollars, which is also going to zero. I mean, there are those charts out there that over the last 100 years, the dollar's lost 99% of its purchasing power, right? And
Sure.
you know this if you go to buy food. I went to buy food yesterday, and it was like $40, and I was just like shocked. Even I was like, whoa, whoa. And I actually sent this is a screenshot of the Colombian peso. Hopefully it comes up. Yeah,
Yeah,
there you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
So
we got
Yeah.
it. 4,900.
okay, so it's 4,968. We'll round that to 5,000. Last May, it was 3,800. 3,800 pesos to the dollar. Today, it's 5,000. That is insane, and that's not even in 10 months. And obviously, if it continues on that trajectory in the next 10 years, this is where Colombians constantly are starting to talk a lot more about cryptocurrency. They're starting with stable coins. But once they realize that stable coins are probably just good for the here and the there and the I'm gonna go buy a beer, I'm gonna go get some eggs. The long term, the wealth, especially in Latin America, is gonna be pumped into Bitcoin. This is my what I'm thinking, what other people are thinking. And the
Why
other thing
Bitcoin
is
though?
just because it's first of all, on many of the exchanges down there, they don't have access to all the coins. And so Bitcoin is definitely one that they still have access to.
But
And there are
I mean, I think about it from this one. Like I think about Bitcoin
Mhm.
as an investment and not as a currency that I spend. So if you're
No, that's what I'm saying. So they'll use stablecoin day to day and use Bitcoin for a long term. The wealthy will put Bitcoin into their
oh, you're talking about the wealthy. Okay, no, I got you.
I'm talking about the wealthy. And the other thing is what happens when a currency goes down, right? As the Colombian currency goes down. The one thing that happens that's guaranteed, and this is all human, and if you're an econ 101 anywhere, foreign investment comes in. So right now, the Chinese are dumping into Colombia. Canadians are dumping into Colombia. People with the United States are dumping into Colombia. That money comes into Colombia, is spent, and then they need to figure out where to put it because they're not in hyperinflation because I think that's 50% per month, but they're in a situation where they're losing so much per year that they have to figure out
Yeah,
where to put it. And they can't really no one wants their pesos, right? They can't take them and like if they exchange them into dollars, it hurts. So they can just put them into Bitcoin and skip putting them into dollars. And there
yeah,
you go. So
interesting. Well, guys, the conspiracy episode actually turned into some pretty quality dialogue about value. And so I like that how in our day and age, you can talk about like extreme conspiracies like the Anunnaki or the Nibiru, but if you connect the dots at all and you're a sane person, you actually get dragged into a reasonable conversation. Fun fact, humans have a tendency to see patterns where they do not exist or where they exist but are meaningless, and it's called apophenia. And it is a trait that can be diagnosable. The group in America that is diagnosed with this the most often, QAnon believers.
I was gonna say conservatives. Okay, cool.
Same Z's, same Z's.
that's a
Uh,
Russian nesting doll there, Jay. So
Russian nesting doll. And that's another conspiracy for another day that God is QAnon. We'll talk about that. on some other episode. I legitimately heard this from a friend of mine that they believe because no one knows who QAnon actually is, it's God through the vessel of Donald Trump. That's for another conversation. Let's dude,
Wow, damn,
yeah.
that was a bomb.
Yeah, something else. So real quick, everyone, Victor, where can people find you?
In LinkedIn, Victor Rivera. Twitter is African Art NFTs.
African Art NFTs. And if you ever want a good chill recommendation, please reach out to Victor. I think he's on the Blur train right now. I think he's checking out Blur, and I think he's checking out Flocky.
Flow. I'm in the flow trade. Check your DM.
I'm in
No,
flow
it's
right
like
now.
those. It's like
Flow
those.
is like gold. Shout outs real quick. Jay, do you have any shout outs today?
Yeah, I'm gonna shout out the people who are suffering from crypto layoffs again. I heard today that Polygon laid off 20% of their
What?
workforce, like a lot. Yeah. So the layoffs are back again. So shout out to everybody who's going through that struggle again. Hope it all.
So do you
Interesting.
think conspiracy? Do you think that layoff is because of AI substituting all this work? Because
I don't think it's AI. I think it's the Federal Reserve wants to see a certain amount of unemployment, and all of tech companies are complying.
damn, that's hard, bro.
we got to get Powell to stop raising rates somehow. Let's just fire everyone and we'll be good.
Exactly.
Jared, any shout outs today?
Oh my God. I shout out everyone who's in the comments. And Victor is such a good guest. Victor's the first guest we've had who not only brings fire on screen, but he's also in the comments. So Victor,
Yeah.
thank you so much for hopping on. Grant, you got shout outs?
My shout out today is to people getting by, and whether it's entertaining conspiracies or just seeing the brighter side of things, people entertaining themselves through the trials. And we know this, from Latin America. I spent a lot of time with Haitians back in the day. And, they just have this phrase called mountains beyond mountains, bro. And it was this translated phrase that means, hey, man, you could conquer a mountain. And they go, mountains beyond mountains. And there was it's type of Zen patience of there's mountains beyond this mountain, my friend. So let's just have a good time. And then if you see people take a lackadaisical attitude, they're not really being lazy. They're just taking life in stride. So for those who aren't taking themselves too seriously, for those who are entertaining and connecting the dots, that's my shout out today, because we need more of those people because they bring a lot of laughter and joy. You know what I'm saying?
That's a funny saying for people who live on an island.
Oh, there's a ton of mountains in Haiti.
Shout out to all you guys, because today, like you say, it was a different show like you guys used to do. But I agree with everything on past show. Like Grant always says, diversify. It's not only Bitcoin. You gotta diversify, and that's how you get the best protection in what is coming. What is coming, Jay?
What's coming? War?
What's coming?
War.
Yeah. So
yeah, man. All right, Jared, where can people find us?
You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube at Not Crypto Bros. We all have different shows. Find us in the show notes. Follow us. This is also called Not Crypto Bros, Not Conspiracy Bros. And today was our celebration of 50 episodes talking about crypto conspiracies. So that's it. That's all I got.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for stopping by.
Peace, y'all.